Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy again, back with another update. I wasn't going to do one today, but it's been juicy overnight, or I don't know, yesterday in the States, but overnight here. These things always pop in really late over here in the UK, and I'm like, oh no, because then I feel like I need to read them before I go to bed, and it's not exactly what you want to be reading. But yeah, another one has just popped in, another bit of passive aggression on behalf of the Lively camp, because they've responded to Brianna Butler-Coslow and Catherine Case's request to extend the time required to produce documents using Blake Lively's e-vendor or whatever they call them. So these are the two tag employees that have been asked to produce a whole bunch of stuff, and they have to they've still to agree what the search terms are, what the parameters are for that information. Apparently some information has already been pulled, but I think Blake has extended the search terms, the search parameters. I haven't talked about that in my last video, but yeah, this little passive aggressive thing has come through from Mike Gottlieb to say, yes, we do not kind of, object to it in theory, but just kind of be forewarned that my clients, this could be prejudicial to my client's deposition, Blake Lively, this is, on July 17th. So they've asked for an extension to the 18th, is what I believe to be true. So which is a bit like, yeah, it's kind of just a little threat, isn't it? It's like a little excuse. If Blake doesn't turn up for deposition on July 17th now, then it's somebody else's fault. It's not Blake's fault. So getting that in nicely. But the thing is, whatever they're going to produce is not in response. It's like Blake is being deposed to call her on her own actions and ask her to prove what she's talking about. But it's nothing kind of in relation to the SH and all of that. She shouldn't really be worried about needing that information from these tag people, because she's going to be, to mine, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm no deposition expert, but surely what Blake is going to be asked about at that deposition is the things that she knows about, not so much the things that she doesn't know about. She can do that on her own time. She doesn't need to know that, to my mind, in order to be deposed. So that's like nonsense to me. She just needs to know what she knows to be factual, which we know is debatable. So yeah, there was just this short little letter from Mike Gottlieb, bit passive aggression to say, yes, we'll extend it to July 18th, but get as much as you can in by July 17th. And if Blake Lively doesn't show up for deposition on July 17th, that's because you lot didn't produce enough stuff and it was prejudicial to deposition, and she didn't show up as a result of that. That will be the story if she doesn't get deposed. But what I did want to read to you today, and I've printed it out because it's so impressive, and it's Kevin Fritz on behalf of Wayfarer parties. And it's so nice when you get one of these, because there's so much that is galling, I think, to most people that comes from the Lively side, that when you get one of these little juicy Baldoni letters, it kind of makes you day. I'm going to read it, so I'll hold it up here somewhere. So this is to Judge Lyman, and the date of it was July 8th. So this is coming from Kevin Fritz. So dear Judge Lyman, as counsel for Wayfarer Studios LLC, Justin Baldoni, etc., the agency group, Able Wayfarer parties, we write in, settle down Etienne, we write in partial opposition to Blake Lively and the Jones parties' motion to amend the case management plan and scheduling order. The motion last week, Ms. Lively referred to Jones Works as a co-conspirator of various Wayfarer parties. Ms. Lively and Ms. Jones, two alumni of the Van Zandt subpoena scheme, have apparently now realigned to jointly seek to delay their respective depositions. Federal rule of, and I must add here, I think in that letter it does say, there's another bit of passive aggression that says that this is why they've applied for an extension of that case management plan, is because Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively together are having trouble because the Wayfarer parties are constantly making these delays. They're sticking to that story with passive aggression through Mike Gottlieb. So, Federal Rule of Civil Procedure provides that A, schedule may be modified only for good cause and with the judge's consent. In the context of a request for the modification of a discovery schedule, that often means a showing by the movement that despite due diligence, it could not have reasonably meet the scheduled deadlines. And this is the best case filing ever. Furry Puppet Studio Inc. versus Fallout Boy, and all the details of that. Now, it does say Lyman J, so I presume that means that was one of Judge Lyman's cases. So the crux of that is the party seeking an extension should demonstrate that it exercised diligence in conducting discovery by describing what discovery it conducted in the time period originally scheduled, and that there are circumstances that were not foreseen at the time of the order sought to be modified, nor the party's fault that give rise to the request for the extension. And then underlined it says, Ms. Lively and the Jones parties have not exercised diligence in conducting discovery. Neither Ms. Lively nor the Jones parties have been diligent in scheduling depositions. Ms. Lively has not served notices of deposition for any of the Wayfarer parties except for Tag, and for that one, Ms. Lively cancelled Tag's deposition. Thus, the Wayfarer parties took the initiative and proposed various dates for their own depositions. Nonetheless, Ms. Lively's counsel has not confirmed those deposition dates, has not claimed that they are unavailable to conduct the depositions on those dates, and has not proposed alternative dates. If you remember from earlier filings, it was saying, Lively's side was saying they're making it really awkward to get a hold of them. They're only saying they're available on very limited dates. That was their side of this thing. And then it goes on to say, if Ms. Lively's counsel prefers other dates for the Wayfarer parties' depositions, they should, as requested of them more than once, identify such dates. So they're not really saying, they're not being clear about they actually want to depose these people and when. It's all stalling, isn't it? All hoping for motions to dismiss to be approved. So, requested of them more, here we go, we'll go back a bit. Ms. Lively's counsel prefers other dates for the Wayfarer parties' depositions. They should, as requested of them more than once, identify such dates, rather than uncooperatively complain that the Wayfarer parties have not explained their unavailability on other unspecified dates. And again, it quotes case law that seems to be Judge Lyman's. Denying motion to which describe denying motion to compel depositions where plaintiffs fail to timely serve notices of depositions. And then it goes on to say, given that Miss Lively has failed to serve any deposition notices, she should not complain about the sequence of depositions. And then it goes on to quote case law that involves denying plaintiff's motion to compel certain deposition sequencing where plaintiff failed to timely serve deposition notices. So it's like, well, you're not telling us when you're going to do it. You're not communicating with us. As for Ms. Jones, she was duly served with a notice of deposition, claims that she is unavailable on the date noticed, and refused to provide an alternative date. Nonetheless, because Ms. Lively and the Jones parties' obstructive tactics have made the existing deadline for the completion of depositions, August 14th, untenable, the Wayfarer parties have no objection to an extension of such deadline to September 30th, 2025. With respect to outstanding requests for production and interrogatories, the parties should respond and/or object thereto. However, the Wayfarer parties object to an extension of the document production deadline to July 25. The crux of the motion is that an extension of the fact discovery deadline in the case management plan and scheduling order, the case plan, is needed because Ms. Lively and the Jones parties only recently, this is the funny part, only recently received footage of It Ends With Us, the film, which notably Ms. Lively credits herself as having edited and thus reviewed. Ms. Lively herself acknowledges that she requested the footage on February 20th, which was A, over 3 months ago, and B, weeks after she knew from the case plan that fact discovery and depositions were to be completed by August 14th. Neither Miss Lively nor the Jones parties moved to compel the production of the film footage by a date prior to the case plan's July 1st, 2025 deadline for substantial completion of document production. Hence, they apparently anticipated their purported need for the footage, but failed to compel an early production thereof. So it's like, we had it, you know what's on it, why didn't you ask for it earlier if it's so valid, if it's so necessary? There is no prejudice to Ms. Lively in receiving the footage in the weeks before or even after her deposition, because it's all about this thing of she needs to prepare something for this deposition, so she needs all of the information because she doesn't know what the hell she's going to say, but she's forgetting this idea that it's not about her. This deposition is not about her proving to them this smear campaign and all of that. It's her explaining her actions. It's her having to say what she recalls of the events and all of that. This whole thing is crazy. So there is no prejudice to Ms. Lively in receiving the footage in the weeks before or even after her deposition. The footage is recordings of incidents where either A, Ms. Lively herself was present and thus she does not need the video to present her case, or B, she was not present and therefore such footage is irrelevant. Indeed, and although they have not done so, the Wayfarer parties would be justified in withholding the footage until after Ms. Lively's deposition so that she cannot improperly tailor her deposition testimony to conform thereto. And then there's some case law quoted as well. So it basically states, Second Circuit courts have delayed the production of audio or videotapes prior to one or more depositions in order to prevent the defendant or its witnesses from tailoring their testimony to conform with their prior recorded statements or actions. And that's exactly what she's wanting to do, isn't it? She's trying to make something out of nothing. All of this is stalling tactics. They're hoping the case is going to be dismissed, and maybe they know they've got a good chance of the case getting dismissed. Maybe they know something we don't know that's going on behind the scenes. But all of this is nonsense, regardless, on Blake's side, regardless of Miss Lively's motivation for wanting the film footage. She admits she largely has it. Aside, this is where they go into this 1 terabyte hard drive that they've provided Blake Lively that supposedly has 50,000 hours of footage on it. And they went to some specialist apparently who told them how many, that a 1 terabyte hard drive would contain like 50,000 hours of film footage. So this is their unspecified sources, public sources, that they asked about that. So citing unidentified public sources instead of someone with actual knowledge, Ms. Lively's counsel claims that the film's footage could amount to roughly 50,000 hours of video. And then it says the court can take judicial notice that 50,000 hours is over 2,083 days and more than 5.5 years. We understand that the footage consists of less than 150 hours. Not only does Ms. Lively have plenty of time to review the footage prior to her July 17th deposition, she's already very familiar with it because she edited it. Editing entails watching and rewatching multiple takes of the same scenes, discerning which takes and scenes to use, noting timestamps, creating different versions with different music, colours and sounds, etc. And as the lead actress, Ms. Lively memorised the script and performed in all relevant footage. As for the Jones parties, it is unclear what relevance the film footage has to their claims for breaches of contract concerning public relations services, or the defences thereto, more case law from Judge Lyman, which boils down to denying motion to stay where defendant offered no good cause for why the depositions of the 3 non-parties cannot go forward. In addition, Ms Lively and the Jones parties meagerly complain that the Wayfarer party's recent document production appears deficient or has potential deficiencies. No details are provided in terms of which specific document requests are at issue, except for documents Ms Lively and the Jones parties allege are missing from the productions of Ms Abel, Nathan and Tag, and acknowledge they already possess through the, in brackets, underhanded Van Zandt subpoena. Notably, Ms Lively and the Jones parties have not attempted to meet and confer in good faith or otherwise. So it makes you think some of these meet and confers have definitely not been in good faith at all with the Wayfarer parties, as required by Rule 4C of the individual practices concerning any purported deficiencies in the Wayfarer parties' recent document production. The motion should be denied for that reason alone. The proposal further requests that the court abandon its own discovery dispute procedures set forth in the individual practices, which all parties have efficiently used, in favour of a briefing schedule started on August 1st. In other words, the motion suggests that for the entire month of July, the parties do nothing except tee up discovery motions, regardless of whether those motions are even necessary or will ever be filed. That course of conduct will inevitably lead to the refusal to schedule or continual adjournment of depositions in July and August 2025. If there is a discovery dispute that cannot be resolved by meeting and conferring, the parties should utilise the individual practices to adjudicate them. Accordingly, the motion should be denied, except to the extent that it seeks to extend the deposition deadline to September 30th, 2025, see Furry Puppet, etc., which basically boils down to overruling objections to magistrate judges' refusal to extend expert discovery deadline where plaintiff failed to show good cause for the request. But I just thought that might give you a little cheer today, just to hear from Kevin Fritz. Because we have heard a lot about Wayfarer aren't doing this, Wayfarer aren't doing that, Wayfarer aren't producing things fast enough, Wayfarer aren't giving as many documents as Blake Lively has done. And it's like, well, given how Blake kind of conducts herself in interviews and how verbose she is, you can imagine when it comes to paperwork, how much paperwork she feels she can fling at somebody that may or may not mean anything or nothing. And I would imagine that on the reverse side, that it's quite concise what the other party are presenting, because it's like, if, as many of us think, you have the truth on your side, the evidence does tend to be quite concise, because you know what it is, you know why it is, you know how it is, whereas I don't think Blake does, because she's still in the process of creating it. So it's like they like boosting up the numbers, don't they, in terms of 50,000 hours of computer footage and the sheer number of documents that she's presented. But it's like numbers don't really mean anything, it's what's in that information, isn't it? But it just did tickle me last night, just getting all of those digs in, because it will be incredibly hard to be Blake Lively and to, if she actually does read that for herself or hears about it, because it's basically calling into question this idea of her as a director, producer, and knowing anything about the process of being a filmmaker, because it's basically saying you should know how much film footage you might get on a 1 terabyte hard drive. After all, didn't she transport a hard drive to South by Southwest in order to show people? It ends with us in its unfinished state. I mean, most of us that work on computers a lot and are regularly doing things with documents and files, you're very aware of what your computer's storage is and what left and what's on your hard drive. And you'll notice the size of a file and what it contains, and you think, oh, that's like a heavy file size for video or whatever it is. But so this letter quite cleverly gets in a few points about, does she not know for herself, or does, why is she just going to random public people who say, oh, there must be about 50,000 hours if it's 1 terabyte. They might just Google that, might they, rather than as somebody that actually knew. And it just is very clever how it gets in about, well, as an editor, as somebody who edited, who calls herself an editor, she should know what's on there. And she also memorized the script. So the film footage is not necessary to her deposition at all. It's like I keep saying. It's like she is thinking, it's like I said yesterday, she is thinking this deposition, the only way I think that she can cope with it in her mind is to think of it as this kind of performance where she's going to get to show up probably in a very nice outfit with lots of jingly jangly jewellery and a purse, and be able to expound on her theory, almost like she's presenting a case. I imagine she's going into this deposition like that, as if she's presenting a case, as if she's, she is the plaintiff in the case, I guess. But this is Wayfarer's turn to pin her down. So it's not about her prosecution, it's about, what's your story, Blake? What's your proof of that? Can you here's like some film footage of where you say SH has happened to you. Can you pinpoint what SH looks like? And here's that footage of you in the birthing scene where you said you basically just had a modesty patch on and was nude. Other than that, can you just watch this film footage and say, is that not like a hospital gown? Is that not black bicycle shorts? Is that not whatever else there is involved in that scene? She thinks the only way she can cope with this deposition is to think of it as a performance that she will have researched. She'll have read the book on this one for sure. Or she'll have had somebody read it on her behalf, and maybe she's listening to it recorded in her sleep overnight to get it word perfect. But this is why she needs so much information ahead of time, because she literally thinks she's going to walk into that deposition and it's going to be her chance to show up as the mother of all women and girls, as she's not mother of dragons anymore. She's the mother of all women and girls, and the poster child for what happens when misogyny comes out to get you, even though many of the people that are talking about her and issues that they have with her are women. So why would they, be misogynists or necessarily Republicans or conservatives or whatever hell the other excuse is, But yeah, I feel like in her head, she's really wobbling because she knows this is the only way she can do it. But at the same time, I feel like there's a little bit in her mind that knows that's not how it's going to go down. And she is terrified of that, I do believe. So I think there's still some question mark over whether she will show up for deposition again, because we know she's already fudged it at least once, don't we, basically? But yeah, I just thought that might tickle you a little bit today and you might enjoy it. And yeah, very good letter on behalf of Kevin Fritz. He needs a Academy Award or something on behalf of that. All right, please do hit that like and subscribe if you can, and consider sharing it and hit the bell so you receive all notifications. I'm not trying to do this too seriously or too thoroughly. I don't want to invest all of my life in it, but I do like to touch on some of the things for you and try and keep it a bit light and not get into hate and vilification and all of that. I still do think it's an important thing to have happened, and that's probably not much consolation for Justin Baldoni, but I think it's opened our eyes wide open to the kind of people that we elevate in life and how we blithely just believe people that seem to be in authority or that seem to have money, or we just assume that the playing field is fair and the rest of it, or we get sucked in, whatever it is. And I think it's also been helpful to many people just to have highlighted what narcissism can look like in the real world. And I think it will have been helpful in the end that more people are aware of what narcissistic behaviour can look like, and not to get themselves manipulated, and to say no and mean it. You know, like, I think many people kind of were, when it came to Justin, they kind of felt a bit, oh God, why didn't you just shut her down? Why didn't you do just this? Why did you let her walk all over you? But it was that thing of, I genuinely think he did try to do that and do it in a nice way, but he was in a horrible position because Sony had her back. So anything he said, Sony went with Blake. You know, she didn't show up. She pulled sick days. She said, I'm not showing up if I don't get this. He was over a barrel, really. He really was over a barrel, and it's easy to get annoyed with him. I mean, I remember those early videos I made when I said, you know, he really was the victim of of this idea of being a male feminist. It really was a bad idea because, you know, women do, and not everybody's going to like this, but I do think of the man, especially if you're in a relationship or even in a working relationship. And this is where feminism has done women a disservice. A man should be like the safe container, like the safe harbour in which you can function as a woman and which you can excel, and you know where the structure is in a way. And that's not to say men should enclose you or encompass you, but there's nothing wrong with a woman enjoying the strength of a solid man who knows what he's doing. And I just, in those early videos, I remember being a little bit critical of Justin. I believed him, but I was critical and saying, you know, oh, he's just been too much of a male feminist, and he's let her walk all over him, and this can be what happens when you kind of don't acknowledge that women have strengths and men have strengths, and we're supposed to work together in the ways that, you know, work for us as both sexes, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as things have progressed, and as more's come out, I do think like he quite often tried to nicely shut her down, and whenever he did that, she extorted him in some way, or didn't show up, or there was a threat, or whatever it was. So I think this is it now. I think people looking at it now, and the more that comes out, I just think it has been a valuable, useful thing, as negative things often are, in what they can teach you and what you can learn for next time so it never happens to you again. And it's been eye-opening for sure, I think, to see what happens when you're dealing with people who refuse to learn from their own lessons, because Ryan and Blake, they are still balls to the wall. It's not their fault. They need to be on the attack. They're in the right. Zero accountability, and it's really useful for us to be able to be seeing it happen in real time. So I hope you enjoyed that, and as I say, please do hit that like and subscribe if you can, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.